Good evening, junior parents. Very excited to have you with us. My name is Jennifer Kirk. I'm the high school counseling curriculum leader. We met with your children yesterday. I'm hopeful that they shared some of what we discussed with them. I'm going to kick off this evening just welcoming you and going over a few details, some changes in college admissions given the now of the pandemic and what we're seeing from our friends on the college admissions side. Now, for some of you, this is your first time going through the process, and for some of you, it's your second, third, or even fourth. And what I can tell you is for your first timers, we will help you through every step of the process. For you second timers, we're going to help you through every step of the process. And for everyone else, we will be here each step of the way. And for anybody who's very veteran or experienced at this, you know that it's different every time anyway. So we will ensure that we keep you informed and we will support your children as we take our steps. Some updates with regard to impacts. So what we know with regard to the impacts of COVID and college admissions and process is that test scores have been impacted immensely. Beginning in March of last spring, even through now, access to taking tests has been very complicated. The AP exams were very different than they've ever been in the past, going online. The SATs and ACTs have been continuously canceled. And so it was very complicated for our current senior class to have access to taking tests. We have seen the same even this fall for our junior students. Most recently, there were some local December tests that were canceled. And so colleges and universities are really looking at that through a lens of context and recognizing the need to be aware of that as they're making decisions. Additionally, even test prep has been complicated to access in some circles. And so again, organizing the timeline of taking tests, after having test prep is complicated. Atypical semester grades. What we've seen is spring of 2020, very atypical grades for our kids. This is true of all schools across the nation. So you are aware there is a school profile that we complete every year that we send with college applications. And on that school profile is a description of our spring grades. And so colleges and universities will accept that and utilize that when they're viewing the transcripts for our students. They will understand what that EE, ME, and BE stands for and how that translated into the transcript GPA for our students. Extracurricular activities. Okay, what we know is everything was canceled in the spring, not just for us again, but for students and children across the nation. Even this fall, things have looked different. We've lost championship access. Our kids have had to be pulled out for, practice time. Perhaps summer opportunities were canceled. And so again, schools and universities recognize this big change. Resumes look different than perhaps they would have a year ago before the pandemic happened. And again, schools and universities are working with us through that, and we will help your children build a resume and an application that really speaks to their own experiences as it has happened and where they are with all of their materials. And then finally, the impact of adjusted family dynamics. So we have seen a lot of change with families. We have families who are living separately, more families who are living with multiple extra family members in the household, and we've seen financial changes with families. And so that is something that schools and universities are working with. That is something with our financial aid programs. We're trying to work with families, and we're seeing changes in decisions with young people. And that has impacted the senior class, certainly across the nation, making decisions to stay perhaps closer to home for safety and health reasons, for financial reasons, perhaps taking a gap year, deferring for a year, or just making completely different decisions based on their personal experience and living through the last 8 months, changing their career pathway. And so that is something that we will continue to talk through as well with your children. Testing. Testing is continually talked about by our students and certainly their families. And so what we know with our current senior class is that generally speaking, schools have gone test optional. So what test optional means is schools will either take test scores or not utilize test scores in the college admissions review. And so it has been something that we've worked diligently with our senior class to decide if they have test scores, whether or not they should submit them. For the junior class, we may be having similar conversations. There are many universities who have opted to move to test optional already or to maintain that holistically moving forward. And so that is something we'll have to discuss at great length and keep an eye on, because that is really changing almost daily with regard to what colleges and universities are doing with test scores. Because, while we look at testing opportunity through the lens of Upper St. Clair, across the nation, students are having differential experiences with regard to access and taking tests. So schools and universities have to make really hard decisions about how they're going to utilize test scores in the admissions process. Something else to think about is scholarships. While a university may not require a test score for admissions, they may want them for scholarships. So school-based programs may need to have a test score while they're reviewing special scholarships, perhaps merit-based. Also, we have local scholarships that we utilize through Upper St. Clair and our local and regional community with regard to 1-year long scholarships or even 4-year scholarships. And so we need to keep an eye on those pieces as well. And then national scholarships. And so what we'll do is with your children is we'll encourage them to keep really a journal, if you will, or a spreadsheet documenting all of this information and keeping it live so it can be updated continuously to ensure they have accurate information. Now, NCAA for the classes of 2021 and 2022 have eliminated test score requirements, and that is the eligibility center for our athletes, determining their eligibility to participate in collegiate level athletics at the Division I and II level. And so we want to ensure that those students are aware they do not need test scores, but they will need other data points in order to be eligible to participate in college athletics. Okay, so admissions, some of the things that we're going to highlight, and I want to start to kick off just so it's on your minds before you step into your individual meetings. Timelines. We've seen a shift in timelines with regard to the application process. Some of our early action and early decision deadlines have been pushed later. Some of our schools have expressed an interest in opening up longer, and some have held tight. And so what we've traditionally known to be standard deadlines have been adjusted. And so again, back to really keeping an eye on schools of interest and having great insight with regard to what they're requiring and never taking the eye off that ball because things are shifting, again, daily. Now, schools who have really opted to forego test scores have maybe chosen to put extra weight on things like essays, recommendations, and interviewing. Some schools have added additional essays. And so when we're working with your children to look at schools and universities of interest, we will encourage them to keep a to-do list for each school and really having a sense of what they're going to have to do for each school. Because a year ago, they may have had to write one essay and maybe a pocket of small supplementals. We may find that they have to do more supplementals than they were originally anticipating. And that is something that we did find with the senior class because those supplemental essays were replacing the test scores that were no longer available. And so we want to ensure that there's a lot of energy and time and authenticity that goes into essay development, and that they really think through what that means to them. Recommendations have to be incredibly thoughtful. Generally speaking, a counselor will provide a recommendation for students, and then students will look at classroom teachers. And we want that to be really recent teachers, generally the junior year. And so in this time, as our kids are going to school in a really differential way for the first 10 weeks or so of school, and some who are fully remote, we want to ensure that they're taking great effort at building relationships with those teachers because those are the folks they'll be asking to write letters of recommendation for them. And then interviewing. Interviewing has often been optional, and we're seeing that become more of a requirement. And schools who have never considered interviewing are now doing so. So we want to ensure that our students utilize the resources we have around interviewing and how they might use that to support their application. ED and interest. ED is referencing early decision. Early decision we'll talk about generally and very specifically because early decision really is something that our students will only utilize if they know they must go to school at that school because it is a binding agreement. If you're accepted, you go. That being said, if they know they really want to go to that school, it is a good way to express interest and show, I have to go to this school. There has been a trend this past application season to really pull from that early decision list more than has happened in the past because schools and universities are really taking a look at that list because they want to know the kids who are applying that want to attend school because they're looking at those offers of admission differently than they have in the past, given pandemic, and they're in wonderment as to whether or not those kids may land on their campuses or not. Showing interest is also important to ensure that we know that those students want to land on campus. Character movement is something we've seen in the last decade, really, that has become exceedingly more and more important to our colleges and universities. Well, they want to enroll, stellar students, good students with rigor on their transcripts, academics, test scores, resumes. They're also looking to build a campus community that is reflective of their mission, and often that has to do with character. Many of us know of Angela Duckworth and her work around grit, perseverance, character, essential skills. And this has become far more important than we've seen in the past. And so we want to ensure that our kids can speak to their character and what they stand for and what that means to them. And we will see that play out in their essays. This is something we will discuss with them in our one-on-one junior meetings as well, and finding ways for them to describe themselves. And then if they are interviewed, they have to find that way to speak to their strengths and who they are as a human. But again, exceedingly more important than it has been in the past as schools and universities are looking to build that campus community. The counselors meet with representatives on a daily basis. We do meetings right now virtual, and we fall into chat rooms with those representatives, and we build relationships with them. And so any anecdotal feedback that we can provide to those representatives becomes important as well. So through this time when we're meeting with our juniors, we want to ensure that we are also building strong relationships with our kids. So when it comes to pass, if we have to make a quick call to a representative, we can really support our students and really just have their back in this application process and provide that feedback to the representatives who are making the decisions for the kids as to whether or not an offer of admission will come through. And a few sidebar comments about deferred students. I have been hearing from a number of students as well as their parents grave concern around spots not being available because the current seniors may defer their admission for 1 year. We're hearing generally from the schools and universities that students who choose to defer will not necessarily be taking seats from the current junior class. So that is something that we can feel good about for our current juniors, that they will still have the number of seats available at schools and universities of interest that they would have had the pandemic not happened. So I feel very positively about saying that because that is the feedback we're hearing from the schools. And then context and grace. No one could have anticipated, obviously, what we've been living through. We've all adjusted how we go to school, as have the colleges and universities, and they've adjusted this admissions process. And so when they're looking at applications, the applications for all students that they're receiving from across our country and from outside of our country are different than they've ever seen. And so they are looking at those applications through that context and through that lens. And they're offering grace where our kids are missing pieces that they wish they would have had and could have had. A wise junior student of mine told me that, right now I'm living a life that I couldn't have imagined, and everything I planned is different. And so we will work with your kids ad nauseum even to support them through this figuring it out process and ensure that they have great options and opportunities moving forward. This junior meetings piece is some of our favorite work. It's so exciting. It's some heavy lift. We make them work pretty hard. It's a lot of dinner table conversations with you all at home, but it's really exciting. And your kids are still going to have amazing options. It's going to be really, really great, guys. You're going to see that. So for a moment here, I'm going to leave up our counselor breakout links just for you to jot those down so you know where you're going to head next. First, though, Mr. Marquis will be popping in here to do a review of Naviance. There have been some adjustments to the program, and so we want to do a brief overview for you so you can see all of the tools and links that are available through Naviance. So take a look at that, and then you'll be back with your counselor friends and go to those breakout rooms that are listed here. Thank you so much for your time. Again, so excited to work with your kids, so excited to have access to them in school here, and we look forward to those individual meetings. And again, you will be hearing from them what those links are, so they'll share those with you. Thanks again so much.
Marquis in the high school counseling office, here to walk you through Naviance for junior year. So a lot of the really cool features in here that we want to cover for juniors. First off, I want to just kind of circle back at the very bottom of the page. you're going to find graduation requirements. And this is something all of our juniors need to have completed. Many of you have all these items done, but I think it's a good idea to go back and check. So here are items from like freshman seminar in ninth grade that we need to have as part of our career portfolio, our 10th grade year career portfolio. So please go back, double check that you have all of these items completed. This all counts toward your graduation project, so every student has to have these completed. Here are junior year requirements, which is really tying into what we're going to talk about today. So our goal using Naviance this year is we're going to build a list of colleges I'm thinking about. So if you click on there, as we're adding colleges to the list, they're going to show up in here, and it's just going to be sort of our running list as kids find schools that they like, that kind of fit the profile that they're looking for. In Naviance, we have some really nice tools. One is called the Super Match, and it's a nice little tool to help kids sift through all the thousands of schools in here. So let's say we want to plug in different criteria. So we can search by state. So you can plug in certain regions, different surroundings. And what it's going to do, you can see in the background, it's adding to the list of schools that kind of match the profile of everything that I'm looking for in colleges, all the important factors for me. So that's one way to sift through all the schools. The second version is called the Advanced College Search. Does the same thing, just a little bit differently. So we can go in and plug in all of the things that are important. I'm looking for a four-year school. I want it to be co-ed. Could be public or private. Let's say I want to be somewhere where there's a few more people. As I continue on, let's say I'm just looking for schools in Pennsylvania. You can pick different states. I think it's kind of cool. You can search by miles away. So you figure like 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours away. But as you add the criteria, view matches, you're going to see a list of schools that specifically match what you're looking for in terms of schools. So let's say we find a school. These little stars mean Gannon has an extended profile. So if I click on Gannon, what it's going to do is give me all of these pictures. A lot of schools will have videos that they have plugged in. If it's a school that I really, really like and want to add it to my thinking about list, I just click on that little heart, and now Gannon's going to be on my thinking about list. You can see the pictures just give you a little flair for the school, what the kids look like, different programs, etc. As I scroll down, you'll find some different data about the school. You can change the average net price based on your family income. Graduation rates, acceptance rates are in here for you. One thing that I think is really cool is college overlaps. So basically what this does is give you a feel for, okay, I really like Gannon. You can see in here the top 10 application overlaps. So of the 47 kids who have applied to Gannon, 26 of those kids have applied to Duquesne, 22 applied to Pitt. So it just gives you an idea of some other schools that kids are looking at as you're kind of embarking on your search. 1 second for this to pop up. Other stuff in here, just general info about the school. What I like is it gives you a feel for who's getting in. So it's going to compare your school, our school, like middle 50% for GPA versus the national average for kids who have been accepted to Gannon. SAT scores, ACT scores are in there for you. Information about like different programs that they offer. So all of the majors, their top areas of study. You can see all the different majors that Gannon offers. Information on student life, how many kids live on campus. Breakdown by ethnicity, gender, age. Other housing information, clubs and activities on campus. Under admissions, you're going to find a lot of the data that we're looking for. So, there are different policies for admissions. Scattergrams for our kids who were accepted, waitlisted, denied. Down here, all the factors that Gannon considers in their application process. Recommended courses, or here the number of classes for English and all the other content areas that Gannon wants for kids who are applying. And then information about their application processes and procedures. Finally, the cost, which is so important to a lot of families. Just gives you a sense of what kids are paying in-state versus out-of-state, breakdown by how much income people are making, so some good information on financial aid is in there. Okay, let's take a step back. Other things we want kids to be working on in here. Um, there's a really nice tool, and I'm going to go into the college section. Researching schools. Something I like to show kids are the college maps. One of the ones I think is really interesting is the top 20 colleges our kids are applying to. So this just gives you a feel. If you're a kid who has no idea where to start, here's where other Upper St. Clair kids are applying. And it's a lot of the schools in the area, but you can see there's some different ones that are a little bit out. But here are the general universities that our kids are looking at. A nice map in the top 20 list. So I think that's really useful for a lot of kids. Some other things that I think are helpful in there, we want all of our juniors to be updating their resumes. So when you have some time, make sure you're going into your resume section and you're adding some items in there and keeping it updated, whether you have new volunteer activities, extracurricular activities, honors and awards, anything that you think colleges or your counselor might want to know about, make sure you're putting that on your resume. Some other things that I think are really useful in Naviance, and this is something important to note. Kids always ask me, hey, I don't know my GPAs, where can I find that? If you go under the About Me section, under My Account, just your general information, contact info, but you'll find your weighted and unweighted GPAs in here for you. So that's in there. Another thing that I think kids will find helpful is under My Stuff, your test scores. So as you take PSATs, SATs, ACTs, our high school gets that information and we upload that data into your Naviance account. So we'll have all of your important test scores in here for you. So those are the main things for junior year you're going to need to know about. One new feature that I really wanted to show you quickly in here is if I scroll down to Naviance Test Prep, there's a really cool SAT prep feature in here. It's kind of similar to what kids have access to for Khan Academy, but what's great about this is it's all synced up with your Naviance account, and it really is a comprehensive program. It's something we've added new this year. So what's cool is you can plug in when you plan to take your SAT, so which date you're looking at, and what it's going to do is chart out a customized course for you to start preparing for that SAT. So here is all of the how to get started, but I'll show you very quickly. Basically, it's going to go through a comprehensive study plan. It's going to help you kind of revisit some of those old lessons that you've learned along the way, but also teach you strategies for how to take the test. So you can see in here how many lessons are plugged in here, and it just goes on and on and on. Lots of lessons for our kids. A feature that I think is kind of cool is they built in some SAT games to help kids, who are gamers, keep engaged, to keep it fun and interesting, so they continue on with it. Flashcards, so there's over 1,000 different flashcards for kids to do their vocab practice. And if I go down to tests, what's really cool is you have your SAT diagnostic test, which is a full-length SAT. We have a full-length PSAT plugged in here. So once you get through those, our kids can take up to 6 practice tests in addition to that. So really comprehensive program in there. So if you're looking for your kids and you're wondering, hey, how are we going to fit SAT prep in? And especially with the circumstances going on right now, here's a free version. It's open to everyone. You can do it at your own time. So it's a really nice option for our kids. So that's everything that I wanted to cover today. If you have any questions, make sure you reach out to your counselors. Moving forward, make sure you attend your junior planning meeting so we can help you walk through all of the stuff together. Thanks so much for your time. Have a great day.